And welcome into the television version of Strategies for Living. I'm marriage and family therapist David McMillan. Strategies for Living, we're all about helping us live healthier, happier, and more peaceful lives in our bodies, in our minds, in our spirits, in our relationships. And we do that by engaging with life strategists each and every time we do Strategies for Living. And Gary Tiemann, we are going to hit all of those topics today here on Strategies. You've got a big job as our life strategist.
We are ambitious.
We are ambitious. Folks, meet one of my very favorite people in the world. He is licensed clinical social worker Gary Tiemann in private practice here in Shreveport and Shreveport-Bossier City area. And today we're going to talk about something that has impacted your life and my life to a great extent. It's called A Course in Miracles.
Yes.
And it just looks impressive. I'll never forget the first time that I ran across it, Gary, at you may remember the bookstore Keep Coming Back.
Oh, yes.
And I was over in Rachel's bookstore, probably 1991, 1992, and I saw it. It jumped off the shelf at me. And, you know, she had some very comfortable chairs. I took it over, I sat down in the chair, and I started moving through it and ended up going to buy it and have been wrestling with it ever since.
Yes. I know the feeling.
You know the feeling?
Yes.
Okay, so how would we describe A Course in Miracles?
Well, the first thing I would say is that, as strange as it may sound for social scientists like us to be talking about such things, it's a channeled work that Dr. Helen Schucman channeled the voice of Jesus, and it was literally, she took it down in transcription and then got together with her boss, Dr. Bill Thedford, another, department head actually at Columbia University.
They were Columbia University Medical Center, and they were professors of psychology.
Yes,
Yeah.
yes. And these are people that know the difference between hallucinations and other phenomena.
Now, Helen wasn't sure at first, was she?
Oh, she was troubled. It wasn't an easy thing with her psychology background and education. It raised lots of questions.
And when she went to Dr. Thetford and she described what was happening, he's the one that said, settle down, you're okay.
He was a lot more comfortable with understanding what was going on.
Yeah. So, A Course in Miracles, and so basically, as I understand it, what Jesus told Helen and what Bill wrote down was that a lot of tradition got some things a little bit, they didn't.
Things got a little confused.
Things got a little confused back in the day.
Yes.
And basically, what Jesus is saying here is it really comes down to love and forgiveness.
Yes, yes. And it's the basic part of this book is broken down into three categories. There's the text, which is basically his explanation of what he really said and tried to clarify the confusion. And since part of what he's saying in there is a lot of what this is about is learning how to think clearly about things, and thinking clearly about things involves understanding love and forgiveness.
So that's where you mentioned social scientists, because one of the things that is really emphasized in here, as a person thinketh, it's about the mind.
Yes.
And the mind is defined in A Course in Miracles. How?
Well, in fact, the essential qualities of everything is mind. It's very similar to Buddhism that way. And, there's a familiar summary of Buddhism, a familiar summary of the Four Noble Truths of Buddhism that comes down to, or they like to say, all suffering is in the mind.
Right.
And when you learn how to think clearly, all suffering ends.
Goes away.
Yes.
Okay.
And, for psychotherapist types like ourselves, that's just right up our alley to understand how the mind and suffering works together.
And just as an aside, for the newer versions of the combined volumes of A Course in Miracles, there are a couple of supplements.
Oh, that's right.
And one of the supplements included is Own Psychotherapy.
Yes.
Which is very provocative, very intriguing.
Yes.
I think I've read it at your encouragement. I think I've probably read it now 7 or 8 times.
You can never do it too much.
No, I don't think so. So, A Course in Miracles, how are miracles defined?
Well, the way I would summarize it, and of course they do a much better job in here than I'm going to, but to simply summarize it, in our confusion, we create suffering. And so learning how to think clearly is how we eliminate the suffering. And so a miracle is, in essence, a correction in thinking.
So it's clear thinking.
Yes.
A miracle is defined as taking away the blocks that
Yes.
the ego, and we'll talk a little bit
Yeah.
about that, puts in our way
Yes.
to clear up our thinking.
Yes. And so when we correct a part of our thinking, when we correct a part of our thinking and get connected to the perfect infinite part of our mind, the part of our mind that was created in the image of God, then there are no limits in anything ever. And so
I like the sound of that. No limits in anything ever. That does sound miraculous.
that's a miracle.
That's a miracle.
That's
Yeah.
where miracles come from. Even the strange miracles that get defined and illuminated in the Bible and other places is a product of that phenomenon. Yeah.
Yeah. Now, how did you come to
Rachel-
find the course?
Rachel's bookstore about the same time.
Yeah.
And I picked it up, and as you know, this is a dense thing.
Yes, it is.
And I struggled with it.
At first I thought, well, she's carrying Bibles now because my first one was just like this. The pages are
Yes.
like a Bible's pages, and I was just intrigued by it.
One difference is that the text, the 600 and something pages, single space text, is mostly in iambic pentameter, Shakespearean prose.
Wow.
That's not like anything I'd ever picked up of that degree before.
Right.
And that was, one of the things that makes it so dense and so difficult. Yet once you start really connecting and getting in touch with what he's trying to say, it becomes this, it's the most beautiful piece of written work I've ever come across now that I'm beginning to get some understanding of it.
You know, you and I have talked about this, Gary, from 1991 to this moment in history. I've picked this up, put it aside, picked it up and put it aside. I've very much wrestled with it. It's been very important to me in the last couple of years, as you know. I've done more than wrestle. Well, I think I still
We still wrestle,
with
yeah.
it, but I've wrestled with a different attitude in the last couple of years. And, quite honestly, there's something that I don't know if this is going to come out right. Maybe you'll understand what I mean. Maybe some people
We're
watching
trying to
this-
explain some big ideas here.
all I can really say is that from down here, there's a truth that resonates here.
I know what you speak of.
There's something that says to me, maybe it's a little voice, and I don't mean I'm hearing voices, so don't put me away. And nothing's being channeled that I know of at the moment, but it's just like a still small voice. Every time that I study the course, I come to a group, we'll talk about the group in a moment, something resonates that says, this is true.
And
This
in
is
fact,
truth.
I would just summarize it simply as you're connecting with truth itself.
Yeah, yeah. And that you feel that. That's palpable when you get it. Some people have that experience, I'm sure, with the Bible.
Oh,
Some people
absolutely.
have that experience with the Torah. Some people have that experience with the Quran.
There are many roads.
Yeah. Now, are we talking a new religion here? I mean, because I mentioned the Bible, I mentioned the Torah, I mentioned the Quran. I don't mean to leave anybody out, but I think we've covered the big three. This is a treatise. This is phenomenal. Are we talking about a new? Are we going to start the Miracleites?
In fact, it even warns in there about how easily truth can be organized into religion, and when that happens, sometimes other things happen besides truth.
Right.
And so,
Like power in politics?
yes.
Okay.
Yes.
Yeah.
And so this is by design an individual process. It is by design a self-study process. Now, it is helpful, for some of us that like and enjoy getting together and talking about this and sharing ideas and deciphering some of this together. But its purpose is for individuals to do this and not to create a religion out of this.
All right, I'm going to wind you up. We're about to go to break, so let me wind you up.
Okay.
My God is an angry God. My God is a jealous God, and I've got to fear the Lord. You're our life strategist, so I'm going to let you take that apart, of course, in Miracles way when we come back. We are talking to Gary Tiemann, licensed clinical social worker today. He is our life strategist. We're talking about A Course in Miracles. We'll be back. Stay with us.
Founded in 1877, the American Humane Association has been dedicated to the idea that all animals, including those raised on our farms and ranches, are entitled to humane treatment. Today, animals on nearly 8,000 farms enjoy a better quality of life because of the ethical, science-based standards established by the American Humane Association. Live better, be humane. Choose American Humane certified products.
Noises like that used to make me hit the deck. But now, I can keep going.
Don't get me wrong, I still don't love crowded places, but it's good to get out again.
Transitioning from the military can be tough, but many veterans are facing similar challenges. Visit MakeTheConnection.net to watch our stories and learn ways to create the story you want to live. Make the Connection.
I don't know why my son would ruin himself with alcohol. Breaks my heart. I don't understand why this is happening. My therapist recommended Al-Anon family groups. I didn't want to go to Al-Anon, but I'm glad I went. Is someone's drinking breaking your heart? You might be surprised at what you can learn in an Al-Anon family group from people just like you. Call 1-888-4-AL-ANON or go to alanon.org.
My husband drinks with friends after work. He has a couple of drinks at home with dinner and a few more while we watch TV. A counselor recommended I try Al-Anon family groups. I didn't want to go to Al-Anon, but I'm sure glad I did. Is someone's drinking breaking your heart? You might be surprised at what you can learn at an Al-Anon family group from people just like you. Call 1-888-4-AL-ANON or go to alanon.org.
It's been more than 5 minutes.
No, it hasn't.
Hey, can you two
I
keep
want
it
it.
for
It's
me?
my turn.
No, it isn't.
Please, just keep it down.
I remember days when just driving down the street would give me anxiety. And now, look at me.
Don't get me wrong, I still don't love crowded places. But it's good to get out again.
Noises like that used to make me hit the deck. But now, I can keep going.
Transitioning from the military can be tough. We all have unique experiences, but many veterans are facing similar challenges. Life goes on, but some things are different now. Visit MakeTheConnection.net to watch our stories and learn ways to create the story you want to live. No one can write it for you. Make sure it's a good one. Make the Connection.
Welcome back into the television version of Strategies for Living. I'm marriage and family therapist David McMillan. You're watching Strategies today, of course, but we began on the radio. You can still listen to us on News Radio 710 Keel every Sunday morning between 9:05 and 10. You can also find us at www.strategiesforliving.com, and every Wednesday, Gary Tiemann, in the Shreveport Times Voices section.
I'm familiar.
And we are talking to licensed clinical social worker Gary Tiemann today, and we are talking about a wonderful work that has impacted both of our lives in a major way and continues to. It's called A Course in Miracles, and you've already mentioned that it's 3 volumes in one. There's a text, there's a workbook, and there's a manual for teachers, and turns out we're all teachers.
Yes.
We're all teachers. Now, I kind of wound you up before break.
Yes, you did.
And so we are told over and over, my God is an angry God.
Yeah.
So I need to fear the Lord.
Yes.
And my God is a jealous God.
Yes.
What does the Course say
Well,
about anger, jealousy, and fear?
And those are some of the things that, troubled me from way back and was awfully confusing, when you try and study, because in the same text that tells you about those kinds of ideas, it also tells you God is love.
Yes.
And
how do you reconcile those
I
two?
couldn't.
Yeah.
And so, once I start figuring out that this book was teaching something very different than that, and that it really does fit that God is love and everything flows from that, then the ideas of anger, of jealousy, and all of those sort of things really just start dissipating. And
do we even have a God that's capable of anger?
I don't know.
That's a human quality.
That's a human
and
quality.
we make God in our image and likeness instead of the other way around so often.
And in psychology, we call that projection.
Yes, yes.
Yeah.
And the Course in Miracles talks a lot about some psychological stuff like projection and the ego.
Yes.
Where does the ego come into this? And basically, we're down to a choice, aren't we?
Yes.
We're down to a choice. The basic choice is, are we buying into the ego's world? And you don't have to look very far out there to understand that we live in an egoic world. So where do we put our treasure?
To use a parable that Jesus used of the prodigal son, in some ways I summarize the ego as being the analogy of the prodigal son.
Yes. Let me go off on my own. I can make my way.
I want to be in charge.
Yes.
I want to take credit.
Yeah.
And so there's that part of us that in the Course and in Buddhism is very similar about this, that defines that part of our mind as the ego. It's the part of our mind that wants to try and make this finite dimension work. And part of the insanity of that is that we're trying to use something that has a finite nature to an infinite end. And those things can never reconcile.
Can never reconcile, yeah. The finite and the infinite, you can't
Are
make 'em work.
antithetical.
Yeah.
Yes. And one of the mistakes that some people get into when they first start recognizing this and looking into this, the finite is sometimes defined as it is in here and some other places as dualism.
Duality, yes.
Yes.
Okay. So good, bad, right, wrong, dark, light.
One
heaven,
defines
hell.
the other.
Yeah.
You can't have one without the other. And so if we're not careful, then it's easy to get into the idea that the infinite is the flip side of the finite. And the fact is, the infinite transcends the finite. It's not of a dualistic nature. It has no other. The whole concept of other goes away when you start thinking from your infinite mind.
Now, this is very much a training course.
Yes.
To train the mind toward that, or to invite the mind. Again, there are no rules. You don't have to do anything.
Right.
In fact, I love the intro. This is A Course in Miracles. It is a required course. Only the time you take it is voluntary. Free will does not mean that you can establish the curriculum. It means only that you can elect what you want to take at a given time.
Yes. And let me point out too that he was speaking to college professors, And so framing it in a framework that they were very familiar with.
And that they understood.
That they understood.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah. But yes, this is about training your mind how to think in infinite terms, training your mind how to transcend all finite things.
Now, we should mention, because you started several years ago, a group that is still meeting.
Yes.
Every Sunday evening, and your phone number, whether people are interested in calling you, you're in private practice, you're a private practice clinical social worker. You take new clients?
I do take some new clients now.
So your number is 798-0518. And so if you're interested in visiting with Gary, you can call him for that. Or if you're interested in learning about this free discussion group, meets every Sunday evening.
Yes.
At 5 o'clock. So if you're interested in joining with us,
please
give you a call.
Please do.
Absolutely no cost involved. The only thing you may want to do is go out and get you A Course in Miracles, but you don't even have to read it, because part of the study group is we read it together and talk about it.
Part of the study group is to help those that are having trouble reading it, because it is not an easy read.
No, and it does, and let's talk a little bit about, we've talked about the text, we've talked about the manual for teachers, but the second part is very much a hands-on.
Yes.
It's
very
a workbook,
practical.
very practical. So tell us a little bit about the workbook. What are we going to find in the workbook?
Okay, so taking the idea that this is about training our mind how to think clearly, then the workbook is Jesus' prescription of daily meditations for a year that will start you on the path of training your mind how to think clearly. It is simply that simple.
Yeah.
And Buddhism here again is very similar. They go through a lot more arduous process in training their mind, but the goals and the framework of the mind being trained is very similar. In fact, I sometimes refer to the Course in Miracles in the workbook as the most efficient mind training mechanism I know that allows us to transcend suffering.
At the beginning of the show, I said body, mind, spirit, and relationship. I think we've done a good job covering body, mind, and spirit, but let's hit all four. Is there stuff about relationship in here?
It's essentially relationship. Mm-hmm. In fact, as we were talking a little while ago about dualism,
yes,
the whole concept of other and how to mend, how to forgive the idea of other is actualized in the projections that we actually think we are other.
Yes.
In the Course, we sometimes talk about atonement literally being broken down into the words at-one-ment.
At-one-ment. I love that.
Yes.
I absolutely love that.
And so in our interactions with other, and in our forgiveness, and in the love that we are able to experience and share with each other, we begin to learn how to transcend the whole concept that we are other and that we become one.
We have barely scratched the surface today, Gary.
Yes.
But what I hope we've done is I hope that we have covered enough territory to whet people's appetite for A Course in Miracles. Now, I should mention that there are many good teachers on A Course in Miracles. Kenneth Wapnick is one.
Right.
John Mundy is one. Gary Renard is one.
Gary Renard was very instrumental for me.
And so you may want to look wherever you buy books, maybe Amazon or Barnes & Noble, and if you Google or put in the search engine there,
yes,
A Course in Miracles, you're going to find all kinds of things that pop up.
Yes.
And the Sunday group meets every Sunday at 5 o'clock. It's an hour-and-a-half group. If people are interested, call you, 798-0518, and you'll give them more information completely free. Everybody's invited, right?
Yes.
Okay. And you're also available for taking clients in your private practice.
Adult practice.
Adult practice. Gary Tiemann, thank you so much for the work you're doing. Thank you for coming and informing us on A Course in Miracles today. We'll have you back because, like I said, we just barely scratched the surface.
There's a lot there.
There is a lot there. Folks, check out A Course in Miracles at your favorite bookseller. and see if you don't agree with Gary and I. It will change your life, so buckle your seatbelt. For Gary Tiemann, I'm marriage and family therapist David McMillan. Don't forget to find us on News Radio 710 KEEL Sunday mornings, also at www.strategiesforliving.com. For Gary, I'm marriage and family therapist Dave McMillan. See you next time here on Strategies for Living.